The officer grabbed his arm before he could reach the clinic door. "Sir, step away from the building." The doctor froze. Patients were already inside. Morning appointments had started. Through the glass, a receptionist watched, confused, as two officers positioned themselves between him and his own entrance. "I work here," he said, calm but firm. The officer didn't release his grip. "We received a report about a suspicious individual attempting to access this property." The words hung in the air. Suspicious individual. He glanced at the clinic sign mounted beside the door, his name printed clearly in large professional lettering. Something he had walked past thousands of times without thinking. Today it meant nothing. "I'm the owner," he said. The second officer moved closer. "Do you have ID?" Cars slowed as they passed. A patient inside raised a phone. The receptionist stepped toward the door, but hesitated, unsure if she should interfere. The doctor slowly reached for his wallet. Years of training had taught him composure under pressure. Emergency rooms, critical moments, life or death decisions. But this felt different. This felt public. He handed over his ID. The officer barely glanced at it. "We need you to step aside while we verify." Verify what? He watched them radio something in, watched the distance grow between him and the building he had spent a decade building. The building he had opened before sunrise every day. The building that carried his name. A nurse opened the door behind the officers. "That's the doctor," she said. The officers didn't move. Instead, one of them looked past the ID and toward his briefcase. "What's inside the bag?" The question shifted the moment, because inside that briefcase was something that would turn this stop into a legal disaster. Something documented. Something time-stamped. Something the officers had already ignored. If you appreciate stories that reveal how fast ordinary moments become life-changing, you're in the right place. The officer reached for the briefcase. And that was the moment everything escalated. The officer took the briefcase before the doctor could answer. "Hold on," the doctor said, voice still controlled. "That contains patient files." The officer paused for half a second, then opened it anyway. The latch clicked. That small sound drew attention faster than the flashing patrol lights. Inside were neatly organized folders, a tablet, and a thin envelope marked with the clinic's legal letterhead. The officer flipped through the top folder without reading, scanning instead, looking for confirmation of suspicion, not truth. "You can't go through that," the doctor said. "Those are protected." The second officer shifted his stance, tension rising. "We're verifying your identity," he replied. Through the clinic window, two patients were now filming. The receptionist stepped outside, anxiety written across her face. "That's Dr. Alex," she said. "He owns the clinic." The officer didn't respond. Instead, he pulled out the tablet. "What's the passcode?" The doctor felt the moment change again, sharper this time. "That device contains medical records," he said. "You don't have authorization." The officer looked at him like the answer itself was suspicious. "Sir, if this is your clinic, this should be simple." Simple. The word echoed in a way that felt almost surreal. A decade of work. Hundreds of patients. A business license framed 10 feet away behind glass. And yet he was standing on the sidewalk, separated from his own building, while someone searched his belongings. A small crowd had formed now. Someone whispered. Someone recorded. Someone asked what was happening. The doctor noticed something else. A patrol supervisor vehicle turning onto the street. The first officer removed the envelope from the briefcase. Legal letterhead. He opened it. His expression changed almost immediately. Confusion first, then hesitation, then the subtle realization that something about this situation was no longer routine. The supervisor stepped out of the vehicle. "What do we have?" he asked. The officer handed him the document, and within seconds, the supervisor looked directly at the doctor, not with suspicion anymore, but concern, because the document they had just opened proved one critical detail. The detainment had started before the call was even reported. The supervisor read the document again. Then he checked the timestamp at the top, 8:12 a.m. He looked at the officer. "What time did the call come in?" 8:19, the officer replied. Silence. The supervisor looked back at the paper. It was a certified property transfer confirmation from the county clerk's office. The clinic had officially expanded into the neighboring suite that morning. The doctor had been instructed to access the new entrance before business hours to meet a contractor. The paperwork was signed, stamped, and electronically verified at 8:12 a.m., 7 minutes before the suspicious person call was logged. The supervisor's jaw tightened. Dr. Alex stood still, watching them calculate what that meant. "You approached me before the report existed," the doctor said quietly. No one answered. The receptionist stepped closer now. "He's been here since 7:30, she added. "We open at 8. One of the patients lowered their phone, slightly, listening. The first officer shifted uncomfortably. "Dispatch said." Dispatch logged the call at 8:19. The supervisor interrupted. "You made contact at 8:16. Another silence. Short, heavy, public. Dr. Alex felt something else settle in. Not anger, but clarity. "You detained me," he said calmly, "before there was probable cause." The officer's grip loosened completely now. The supervisor handed back the document slowly, eyes scanning the small crowd gathering on the sidewalk. "What's in the rest of the briefcase?" he asked, softer this time. "Patient agreements," Dr. Alex replied. "An assigned contract with the property owner confirming expansion of the unit." The supervisor exhaled through his nose. Then he noticed something else. The tablet screen inside the briefcase had activated automatically when opened, and in the corner, a red recording icon was blinking. The officer had not just searched protected materials. He had recorded himself doing it on the doctor's secure device, and the footage was already syncing to cloud storage. The supervisor stared at the tablet. "Is that recording?" he asked. Dr. Alex didn't raise his voice. "Yes." The officer stepped back instinctively. "It activates when the case opens," the doctor continued. "For liability protection." The red icon blinked steadily. "Recording. Uploading. Time stamped." The supervisor looked at the first officer, then at the growing crowd. 2 patients were openly filming now. A neighbor across the street had stepped onto his porch. "This doesn't need to escalate," the supervisor said carefully. Dr. Alex met his eyes. "It already has." The first officer tried to recover. "We were responding to a call." "You detained me before the call was logged," the doctor replied. That sentence landed harder than anything else. The supervisor turned slightly away, speaking into his shoulder radio in a lower tone. The words weren't clear, but the urgency was. Meanwhile, the tablet screen shifted. A notification appeared in the corner. "Secure upload complete." The officer saw it. His face changed, because that meant whatever had just happened, the grabbing, the search, the questions about private medical files, was no longer contained to the sidewalk. It was stored, verified, preserved. Dr. Alex adjusted his coat slowly, deliberately. "You access confidential medical materials without a warrant," he said. In front of witnesses, the supervisor's jaw tightened again. "We didn't review patient information," he replied. "You opened a protected case," the doctor said. "That's enough." A silence followed, not confused this time. Serious. A news van turned onto the street. Someone had called a local station. The supervisor noticed it too, and in that moment, the situation shifted from a neighborhood misunderstanding to a public liability crisis. The officer finally spoke, quieter now. "Sir, you're free to go." Dr. Alex didn't move toward the door. Instead, he looked directly at the supervisor. "You detained me outside my own clinic," he said evenly, "in front of my patients." The news camera parked across the street, and the reporter stepped out. This wasn't ending quietly. By noon, the footage was everywhere. The clip was short, just under 4 minutes, but it showed everything. The grab, the briefcase opening, the timestamp, the supervisor checking the log, the words, "You approached me before the report existed." Local stations ran it first. Then regional outlets picked it up. By evening, national media had the headline, "Doctor wrongfully detained outside his own clinic." The police department issued a brief statement calling it a procedural misunderstanding. But the timestamp didn't misunderstand anything. 8:12, document verified. 8:16, physical detainment. 8:19, suspicious person call logged. The sequence spoke for itself. Inside the clinic, Dr. Alex tried to focus on patients, But the waiting room buzzed with quiet conversation. Some offered support. Some asked what would happen next. He gave the same answer each time. We'll handle it properly. At 3:47 p.m., his attorney filed a formal notice of intent to sue. The claims cited unlawful detainment, illegal search of protected medical materials, reputational damage, and civil rights violations. Estimated damages, $22 million. The number wasn't random. Lost revenue, security upgrades, emotional distress, public defamation, HIPAA exposure risk, long-term brand damage. It added up quickly. By 6 p.m., the department had placed both officers on administrative leave pending investigation. By 8 p.m., the supervisor was called into a closed-door meeting with city officials. And by 9:30 p.m., Internal Affairs requested full body cam footage, not just the segments circulating online, because something else was beginning to surface. A review of dispatch audio revealed the suspicious person call came from an anonymous number. No caller ID, no follow-up contact, no description beyond a man trying to enter the building that clearly displayed his name. Investigators began asking a quiet question. Why had officers arrived so quickly, before the call officially existed? And that question changed the case from a wrongful stop to something much bigger. The following morning, a formal civil lawsuit was filed. $22 million lawsuit filed after doctor wrongfully detained outside his own clinic. The headline matched the filing. But the discovery phase was about to uncover something the department hadn't prepared for. And it wasn't just about that morning. The discovery process began quietly, but it didn't stay that way. Dr. Alex's legal team subpoenaed dispatch logs, internal text messages, patrol GPS data, and officer communication history from the previous 6 months. What they found changed the tone of the case completely. The patrol car that detained him had not been randomly assigned to that area. It had been stationed 2 blocks away for nearly 20 minutes before the encounter. Waiting. Body cam metadata confirmed the officer activated recording only after physical contact was made, not upon approach, as department policy required. Then came the internal messages. A text from earlier that morning between 2 officers. Same clinic. Yeah, that one. Got it. No explanation. No report number attached. Just familiarity. The legal team dug deeper. Over the past year, the clinic had received 3 prior suspicious activity complaints, all anonymous. Each one resolved with no incident. Each one logged without identifying the caller. Each one involving early morning arrivals. The pattern was subtle, but it was there. And when the lawsuit formally named the department for negligent supervision and unconstitutional detainment, the tone of the city's response shifted from defensive to urgent. City attorneys requested mediation. Dr. Alex declined. He didn't want a quiet settlement. He wanted documentation, because this was no longer just about embarrassment outside a building. It was about a pattern of enforcement that operated on assumption first, verification second. At a press conference, his attorney stated, "The timeline proves there was no probable cause at the moment of detainment. The evidence suggests premeditated approach, not reactive policing." The words carried weight. Premeditated. The department issued another statement, shorter this time. Internal review ongoing. But inside City Hall, discussions were more direct. If this went to trial, body cam footage would be played in open court. Dispatch audio would be examined. Text messages would be read aloud. And a jury would see a physician standing outside his own name on a building, being restrained without cause. The financial exposure wasn't just $22 million anymore. It was reputation, policy overhaul, federal attention, and maybe something worse. Because during document review, one more detail surfaced. The anonymous call that morning had originated from a prepaid device, but the tower ping placed it less than half a mile from a clinic and registered within the same coverage zone as the patrol car, which meant the question investigators were now asking was far more serious. Was the call really anonymous? Or was it coordinated? And if it was coordinated, who initiated it? The subpoena for tower data changed everything. Telecom records confirmed the prepaid device had connected to the same cell sector covering the patrol unit's GPS location at 8:14 a.m., 2 minutes before the detainment. 2 minutes before the call was logged. City attorneys went quiet. Internal affairs went louder. The department's digital forensics team cross-checked patrol vehicle data, and something else surfaced. One officer's personal phone had briefly connected to the same tower sector within seconds of the anonymous call. It wasn't proof, but it wasn't coincidence either. Then came the dispatch audio, the full, unedited file. The call sounded rushed. Male voice. Minimal detail. There's a man trying to get into the clinic. Looks suspicious. Dispatch asked for description. Silence. Then, he's got a briefcase. The recording ended abruptly. No follow-up questions. No caller verification. Just a patrol assignment. When investigators enhanced the audio, something faint became clearer. Background noise. A police radio squelch. Very brief, but unmistakable. The implication was devastating. If the anonymous call originated from someone near or inside law enforcement range, the narrative shifted from negligent detainment to potential fabrication of probable cause. And fabrication carries consequences beyond civil liability. The mayor's office requested an emergency briefing. City council members began distancing themselves publicly from the department. Meanwhile, Dr. Alex remained composed. He attended court hearings. He saw patients. He declined emotional interviews. When asked why he refused early settlement discussions, he gave a simple answer. Transparency matters. The department offered mediation again, this time privately. The number floated, 6 million, then 9 million, then 14 million, still below the filed amount, still contingent on non-disclosure. His legal team declined again, because during deposition, under oath, one officer made a critical statement. We were already in the area monitoring the location. Monitoring, not responding. That single word entered the official record. And once it did, the city's risk assessment report changed overnight. Projected trial exposure, up to $28 million. Federal civil rights review, possible. State attorney inquiry, pending. The case was no longer about mistaken stop. It was about whether officers created justification after detaining a man outside his own clinic. And if a jury believed that, the $22 million lawsuit headline would only be the beginning. The trial date was set for early spring. But 3 weeks before jury selection, something unexpected happened. The city requested a closed session vote, and the amount discussed inside that chamber was higher than the original filing. Much higher. The public would learn the number soon, but not before one final detail surfaced, one that made settlement almost unavoidable. During final forensic review, investigators confirmed the prepaid phone used to place the anonymous call had been purchased, using a department-issued fuel card. The fuel card record was the breaking point. Transaction time, 7:52 a.m. Location, convenience store 3 blocks from the clinic. Item purchased, prepaid mobile device. The receipt matched the device ID tied to the anonymous call. Internal affairs didn't need speculation anymore. They had documentation. Within 48 hours, one officer resigned. One officer was terminated. The supervisor was placed on administrative leave pending review. The city moved quickly after that. Not publicly, quietly, because the legal exposure had shifted from civil negligence to potential civil rights conspiracy. The closed session vote concluded late on a Thursday evening. The next morning, the headline broke. $22 million lawsuit filed after doctor wrongfully detained outside his own clinic. Settlement reached. Final settlement amount, $22 million. No admission of criminal wrongdoing in the public statement. But the agreement included full policy overhaul on detainment procedures, mandatory body cam activation upon approach, independent oversight review for 3 years, public transparency report on anonymous dispatch calls, formal written apology to Dr. Alex. At a brief press conference, Dr. Alex stood outside the same clinic doors where the detainment happened. The same entrance, the same glass, but this time no patrol lights, no crowd, just reporters. I didn't file this case for money, he said calmly. I filed it for accountability. When asked what he would do with the settlement, he replied, invest in patient privacy protection, community health programs, and legal advocacy support. Then he went back inside. The clinic reopened that afternoon without interruption. But the story didn't fade. Because once the public understood that a fabricated anonymous call led to a lawful business owner being restrained outside his own property, trust became the real issue. The department's annual report the following year showed a 32% drop in anonymous suspicious person dispatches. Body cam compliance rose to 98%. Oversight meetings were now streamed publicly. The moment that began with a hand on an arm ended with structural change. And the footage, the briefcase opening, the timestamp, the red recording icon, remained archived. A reminder of how quickly authority can overstep, and how documentation can restore balance.